The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the crowded halls of Westfield High, a sprawling brick building nestled in the heart of Charlotte, North Carolina, where the air carried the faint scent of chalk dust and teenage restlessness. It was a crisp fall afternoon, the kind where leaves crunched underfoot outside and the chatter of students echoed off chipped lockers painted a faded blue. Amara Tate stepped through the throng, her braided hair swinging gently against her backpack, her denim jacket patched at the elbows, a hand-me-down from her older brother that she wore with quiet pride. At 16, she was a soft-spoken junior with a knack for sketching, her brown eyes sharp with a dreamer's focus, though today they flickered with unease as she navigated the post-lunch rush. The hallway was a river of varsity jackets and glittery phone cases, kids jostling toward their next class, when a shadow loomed ahead. Jake Randall, a senior with broad shoulders and a smirk that cut like glass. His blonde hair flopped over his forehead, and his sneakers, pristine white Nikes, squeaked against the linoleum as he blocked her path. "Hey, Picasso," he sneered, loud enough to draw eyes, his voice dripping with mockery. "Lost your crayons again?" Amara clutched her sketchbook tighter, her jaw tightening, but she kept her tone even. "Just trying to get to class, Jake." His laugh barked out, sharp and cruel, and he stepped closer, towering over her. "Class? You don't belong here, charity case." The crowd slowed, heads turning, some giggling, others frowning, as Jake's crew, a trio of boys in matching hoodies, flanked him, egging him on. "Move," Amara said, her voice a low thread of steel, but Jake's hand shot out, shoving her shoulder hard enough to send her stumbling back, her sketchbook tumbling to the floor with a thud that silenced the hall. What happened next would flip Westfield High upside down, a twist so wild it'd leave every jaw on the ground. But first, tell us where you're watching from in the USA. Drop your city below, and if you love a story where bullies get what's coming, stick with Raven Stories for the ride. Amara's day was about to turn Jake's world to ash. Westfield High was a patchwork of Charlotte's sprawl, its red brick facade weathered by decades of humid summers and its halls a maze of trophies gleaming in glass cases, testaments to football wins and faded glory. Outside, the parking lot shimmered with late-model sedans and a few rusting pickups, while inside, the walls bore posters for homecoming dances and college fairs, their edges curling in the damp air. The bell had just rung, signaling the end of lunch, and the hallway pulsed with students, cheerleaders twirling hair around manicured fingers, bookish kids hugging binders, and jocks like Jake strutting as if they owned the place. Amara Tate stood out not for flash but for her quiet grit, her sneakers scuffed from long walks home, her backpack slung low with the weight of textbooks she'd borrowed from the library. Jake Randall, though, was a king in his own mind, captain of the wrestling team, son of a car dealership owner, his confidence a shield forged from privilege. His shove had sent Amara's sketchbook skidding, its pages splaying open to reveal charcoal drawings of city skylines and faces. Her dad's among them, though no one noticed that yet. "Oops," Jake said, his grin widening as his crew snickered, one kicking the book further down the hall. "Guess you're trash, too." The crowd thickened, a semicircle forming, some kids whispering, others filming with their phones. A girl in a pink sweater, Tara, muttered to her friend, "He's such a jerk." Her friend, a lanky boy named Miles, nodded, his brow creasing. She didn't even do anything. Across the hall, a freshman in glasses, Ellie, clutched her books tighter, her voice a hush. Someone should stop him. Amara straightened, her eyes flashing as she stepped toward her sketchbook, but Jake blocked her again, his chest puffed out. "What's the matter, Tate? Gonna cry to your mommy?" His words stung, and the crowd's murmurs grew, a mix of amusement and unease rippling through. Amara's hands balled into fists, her voice steady despite the heat in her cheeks. "Back off, Jake. Last warning." His laugh was a blade, and the tension coiled tighter, a storm brewing in the fluorescent haze. Jake Randall thrived on the spotlight, his years at Westfield High a parade of taunts and triumphs, his wrestling trophies a currency that bought him leeway with teachers and fear from peers. He'd singled out Amara before, her quiet ways, her thrift store clothes, but today something darker fueled him, a need to stamp out the flicker of defiance in her eyes. The hallway stretched long and narrow, its lockers a steel canyon framing their standoff, the air thick with the sour tang of sweat and cheap cologne. Amara bent to grab her sketchbook, her braids brushing the floor, when Jake's foot lashed out, stomping the pages with a crunch that echoed like a gunshot. "Stay down," he snapped, his voice a growl, and then he grabbed her jacket, yanking her up and slamming her against the locker with a clang that rattled the metal. The crowd gasped, phones trembling in hands as the scene spun out of control. Amara winced, pain shooting through her shoulder, but her glare held firm, her voice cutting through his snarl. "You're done, Jake." He laughed, louder this time, and shoved her again, her head thudding against the locker as her sketchbook slid further away. Tara's hands flew to her mouth, her voice breaking. "He's gone too far. Someone get a teacher." Miles stepped forward, hesitant, then froze as Jake's crew jeered, "Mind your business, nerd." Ellie, the freshman, darted toward the office, her glasses slipping as she ran, whispering, "This is bad. This is so bad." The hallway buzzed with shock. Some kids cheered Jake on, others shouted protests, a chaos of voices rising like a tide. "She's just standing there taking it," a boy in a beanie muttered, awe in his tone. "He's a coward," another snapped, her ponytail swinging as she filmed. Jake leaned in, his breath hot against Amara's face, his words a hiss. "No one's saving you, Tate. You're nothing." But Amara's eyes burned, a fire he couldn't douse, and the hook sank deep. The bully's reign was teetering, and the hall held its breath for the fall. The hallway at Westfield High turned into a pressure cooker, its fluorescent lights flickering as if straining under the weight of the moment. The linoleum scuffed from 100 sneakers skidding to a halt. Jake Randall's grip on Amara's jacket tightened, his knuckles whitening as he pressed her harder against the locker, the metal groaning under the force. Her braids swung wild now, her backpack dangling from one strap, but her face stayed steady, her lips pressed into a line that dared him to push further. The crowd's noise swelled. Shouts, gasps, the hum of phone cameras, a symphony of chaos that drowned out the distant bell's echo. "You think you're tough?" Jake spat, his voice rising, his crew circling like vultures, their laughter a jagged edge. "You're just a nobody playing pretend." He raised a fist, the threat hanging heavy, and the hall sucked in a collective breath, waiting for the blow. Amara didn't flinch, her eyes locked on his, her voice low and unshaken. "You're the one pretending, Jake, and you're about to find out why." His fist wavered, confusion flashing across his face, but his pride shoved it aside and he swung, not at her face, but at the locker beside her, the bang reverberating like thunder. Tara yelped, clutching Miles' arm. "He's lost it." Miles' jaw clenched, his voice tight. "She's not scared. Look at her." Ellie burst back into the hall, a teacher trailing behind, but the man froze, overwhelmed by the scene. The crowd parted slightly, whispers racing. "He hit the locker." "She didn't even blink." And Jake's crew faltered, their bravado thinning as Amara stood tall, her calm a wall he couldn't break. "Last chance," she said, her tone a quiet blade, and Jake's sneer twisted into something uglier, his breath ragged. "Chance? You don't get chances, Tate." He shoved her again, harder, and the teacher, a wiry man named Mr. Phelps, finally shouted, "Randall, stop!" But Jake ignored him, his eyes wild, and the hook dug in. Amara's stillness was a fuse, and the explosion was coming fast. The hallway at Westfield High trembled on the edge of chaos, its walls vibrating with the shouts of students and the sharp crack of Jake Randall's fury, his latest shove sending Amara's backpack crashing to the floor, spilling pencils and a dog-eared notebook. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder, casting stark shadows across the linoleum, while the air grew thick with the metallic tang of locker paint and the heat of too many bodies packed close. Jake towered over Amara, his fist still raised from the locker strike, his chest heaving as he roared, "You're done, Tate. Done." Her denim jacket hung askew, but her eyes burned with a quiet fire, her voice steady as she murmured, "We'll see." Mr. Phelps pushed through the crowd, his glasses fogging with sweat, his voice cracking. "Jake, back off now, or you're suspended." But Jake's laugh was a snarl, his crew egging him on with hoots until a deeper sound cut through, a heavy, deliberate tread echoing from the hall's end. Heads turned, phones swiveled, as a man in a crisp Navy uniform strode forward, his polished badge glinting under the lights, his broad frame parting the sea of students like a ship through waves. Chief Darius Tate, Charlotte's police chief, stood 6'3", his salt and pepper hair cropped close, his dark eyes narrowing as they locked onto the scene. "Amara," he called, his voice a low boom that silenced the hall. Jake froze, his fist dropping, his smirk vanishing as Darius approached, his boots clicking with authority. "Dad," Amara said simply, brushing her jacket straight, her tone calm but firm. "I've got this." The crowd erupted, gasps, whispers, a stunned, "Her dad's the chief?" from Tara, while Miles's eyes widened. "Oh, man, Jake's screwed." Ellie's jaw dropped, her glasses slipping again. Jake stammered, Wait, what?" And Darius's gaze shifted to him, cold as steel, the hook landing hard. Trouble had just walked in, and Jake's world was about to shatter. The hallway at Westfield High fell into a stunned hush as Chief Darius Tate's boots struck the linoleum, each step a drumbeat of reckoning that drowned out the last echoes of Jake Randall's bravado. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting his shadow long and dark, his Navy uniform crisp against the chaos, the gold star on his chest a beacon of authority that turned every head. Amara stood beside the dented locker, her sketchbook still splayed on the floor, her braids framing a face that held no fear, only a quiet trust as her father approached. Jake's crew shrank back, their hoodies slumping as their laughter died, while Jake himself stood rooted, his blonde hair plastered with sweat, his eyes darting between Amara and the towering figure closing in. "What's going on here?" Darius asked, his voice deep and steady, a rumble that seemed to shake the lockers themselves. Mr. Phelps stepped forward, his hands wringing, his tone frantic. "Chief Tate, it's just a misunderstanding. I was handling it." But Darius raised a hand, silencing him, his gaze fixed on Jake. "Doesn't look handled to me." The crowd buzzed, phones still rolling, Tara whispering to Miles, "That's her dad?" No wonder she didn't back down. Miles nodded, his voice hushed. "Jake's toast." Ellie clutched her books, her eyes gleaming. "This is like a movie." Jake's bravado cracked, his voice trembling as he forced a grin. She started it, sir. I was just messing around." Darius's eyes narrowed, and he glanced at Amara, who shook her head slightly, her tone dry. "Messing around doesn't dent lockers, Jake." The chief bent down, picking up her sketchbook with a gentleness that belied his size, his fingers brushing the torn page of his own portrait, a sketch Amara had drawn months ago. He straightened, holding it up, his voice dropping lower. "You put your hands on my daughter?" Jake's face drained of color, his knees wobbling, and the hook sank deeper. Darius's calm was a storm gathering, and Jake was caught in its eye. The air in Westfield High's hallway thickened with tension as Chief Darius Tate held Amara's sketchbook, his broad hands dwarfing the pages, his eyes boring into Jake Randall with an intensity that stripped away the senior's last shred of swagger. The fluorescent lights hummed, their glare harsh against the chipped lockers, while the crowd pressed closer, a wall of wide eyes and trembling phones capturing every second. Jake's crew had melted into the throng, their loyalty evaporating as Darius's presence loomed, his badge a silent promise of consequence. Jake swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, and forced a laugh that sounded like a choke. "Your daughter? Come on, man. Sir, I didn't know, okay? It's not a big deal." His voice cracked, too loud in the hush, and he gestured wildly, his pristine Nikes squeaking as he shifted. "She's fine, see? Just a little push." Amara dusted her jacket, her voice steady. "A push that trashed my stuff and slammed me into a locker. Real little, Jake." Darius's jaw tightened, his silence a blade, and the crowd erupted. Tara shouting, "You're lying, Randall. We all saw it." Miles stepped up, his lanky frame bold now. "You're a bully, and you're busted." Ellie's voice piped up, fierce despite her size. "He deserves whatever's coming." The tide turned, cheers and boos mingling as Jake's bravado crumbled, his crew nowhere to be seen. "Shut up, all of you," he snapped, his face reddening, but Darius took a step closer, his boots deliberate, his voice a low growl. "You don't talk to them. You talk to me. Explain yourself, now." Jake's hands shook, his grin twisting into a scowl, and he doubled down, desperation fueling him. "She's exaggerating. I barely touched her. Ask anyone." But the phones told a different story, and the hook landed firm. Jake's lies were a rope tightening, and the chief wasn't letting go. The hallway at Westfield High stood still, its fluorescent buzz a faint hum beneath the thunder of Chief Darius Tate's presence, his Navy uniform a wall of authority that dwarfed Jake Randall's shrinking frame. The lockers gleamed dully, their dents a silent witness to the chaos, while the air carried the faint rustle of Amara's torn sketchbook pages and the murmur of a crowd now fully against their fallen king. Darius held the sketchbook up, his voice cutting through the tension like a siren. "You didn't just touch my daughter, Randall. You attacked her. On camera, in my school district under my watch." He turned to the crowd, his eyes sweeping over them, and raised his voice. "I'm Chief Darius Tate, Charlotte PD. Amara's my kid, and I don't take kindly to anyone laying hands on her, or anyone else." The revelation hit like a bomb, a shockwave of gasps and shouts ripping through the hall. Jake's knees buckled, his Nikes slipping on the linoleum as he stammered, "Chief? No, no way, I didn't." Tara's jaw dropped, her voice a squeak. "Her dad's the police chief. Oh my God." Miles let out a sharp laugh, his eyes gleaming. "You're done, Jake." Ellie clapped her hands, her glasses fogging with excitement. "He's so busted." The crowd surged, phones thrust higher, capturing Jake's collapse as Darius stepped closer, towering over him. "You thought you could bully her because she's quiet? Because she doesn't flaunt? That's where you went wrong." Amara crossed her arms, her braids swaying as she spoke, her tone dry. "Told you you'd regret it, Jake." His face crumpled, sweat beading on his brow, and he sank against the locker, his voice a whimper. I didn't know." But Darius cut him off, his tone steel. "Ignorance isn't an excuse. You're answering for this." The hook slammed home. Jake's reign was over, and the chief's justice was just beginning. The hallway at Westfield High pulsed with the aftermath of Darius Tate's words, the fluorescent lights casting stark lines across his uniform, his badge a glinting promise of order in the chaos Jake Randall had sown. The crowd stood transfixed, their phones still rolling, their whispers a low roar as Amara picked up her scattered pencils, her movements calm, her denim jacket settling back into place like armor. Jake slumped against the locker, his blonde hair a mess, his pristine Nikes scuffed from his stumble, his eyes darting like a trapped animal's. Darius loomed over him, his broad shoulders squared, his voice a steady drumbeat that silenced the hall. "You've got two choices, Randall," he said, his tone firm but measured. "You can face the full weight of this, assault charges, school board, the works, or you can own it right here, right now, and start fixing what you broke." Jake's breath hitched, his hands trembling as he muttered, "Charges!" I didn't mean to hurt her, I swear." Amara straightened, her sketchbook in hand, her voice cutting in. "You meant to humiliate me, Jake. That's enough." Tara nodded fiercely, her pink sweater bright in the dim light. "He's been picking on her all year. Don't let him off." Miles crossed his arms, his voice bold. He needs to learn. Ellie piped up, her glasses glinting. Yeah, make him apologize. Darius raised a hand, the crowd hushing, and leaned closer to Jake, his eyes piercing. This isn't just about Amara. It's about every kid you've pushed around, thinking you're untouchable. I've seen your type. Bullies don't stop till someone stops them. So, what's it gonna be? Jake's shoulders slumped, his voice a rasp. I'll own it. I'm sorry, okay? But Darius shook his head, his tone unyielding. Sorry's a start, not a finish. You're gonna prove it. The hook tightened. Justice was rolling, and Jake's reckoning was a lesson for them all. The hallway at Westfield High shimmered with a strange stillness as Chief Darius Tate's words sank into Jake Randall, the fluorescent lights flickering like a spotlight on his unraveling. The lockers stood as silent sentinels, their dents a map of his aggression, while the air grew heavy with the scent of spilled coffee from a teacher's mug dropped in the fray. Jake sat crumpled against the metal, his Nikes no longer pristine, his blonde hair clinging to his forehead, his hands limp in his lap as the crowd watched, their phones finally lowering, their faces a mix of shock and satisfaction. Amara stood beside her father, her braids framing a face that held no triumph, only resolve, her sketchbook tucked under her arm like a shield she'd never needed. Darius crossed his arms, his uniform crisp against the chaos, his voice a steady anchor. You're off the wrestling team pending review, Randall, and you'll be in my office tomorrow. Community service, restitution, whatever it takes to make this right. Jake's head snapped up, his voice a croak. The team? Sir, please, I need that. But Darius's gaze silenced him, cold and final. You needed a lesson more. Tara clapped, her voice ringing. Good, he doesn't deserve to wrestle. Miles grinned, his lanky frame relaxing. About time someone shut him down. Ellie's eyes shone, her whisper soft. She's so cool. Her dad, too. The crowd murmured approval, a wave of nods and cheers rippling through while Jake's crew slunk away, their hoodies vanishing into the throng. Mr. Phelps stepped up, his glasses fogged, his tone meek. I'll report this to the principal, Chief. Darius nodded, then turned to Amara, his voice softening. You okay, kid? She smiled faintly, her tone dry. Been better, Dad, but yeah. The hook landed firm. Jake's fall was complete, and Amara's strength was the story they'd all remember. The hallway at Westfield High exhaled as the chaos settled, the fluorescent lights steadying, their hum a faint backdrop to the rustle of students dispersing, their footsteps echoing off the linoleum like a retreating tide. Chief Darius Tate stood beside Amara, his broad frame a pillar of calm, his badge catching the light as he surveyed the scene, his eyes softening when they met hers. Amara adjusted her backpack, her denim jacket patched but proud, her braids swinging as she stepped forward, her voice rising above the fading murmurs. This isn't just about me, she said, her tone clear and firm, a thread of steel woven through her quiet nature. Jake's been shoving people around since freshman year. Me, Tara, half the art club. He thinks it's a game because no one stops him. The crowd paused, heads turning back, phones pocketing as her words sank in. Tara nodded, her pink sweater bright as she spoke up. She's right. He tripped me in gym last month, Miles added, his voice sharp. He stole my project once, trashed it. Ellie's glasses glinted as she whispered, He's mean to everyone. Jake shrank further, his face buried in his hands, his Nikes scuffing the floor as Amara continued. I didn't want my dad to fight this for me. I wanted Jake to see he's not invincible. But since he wouldn't stop, here we are. Darius rested a hand on her shoulder, his voice low. You stood your ground, Amara. That's what matters. She looked up at him, then back at the crowd, her eyes steady. It's not about who your family is. It's about who you are. Bullies only win if you let them. The hall buzzed with agreement, a ripple of claps and nods, and the hook deepened. Amara's courage was the heart of this, and the lesson was spreading fast. The hallway at Westfield High glowed with a quiet power as Amara's words hung in the air, the fluorescent lights casting a soft halo around her and Chief Darius Tate, their shadows stretching long across the linoleum. The lockers stood dented but still, their chipped paint a testament to the storm that had passed, while the air lightened with the scent of pine cleaner drifting from a janitor's cart down the hall. Darius stepped forward, his boots clicking with purpose, his voice rising like a preacher's call over a congregation. "Listen up, all of you," he said, his tone deep and resonant, his eyes sweeping the crowd. "I'm not just here as Amara's dad. I'm here as your police chief. This school's my beat, too, and I don't tolerate bullies running it." The students stilled, their chatter fading, their faces a mix of awe and respect as he continued. "Amara's right. It's not about me or this badge. It's about standing up, every day, for what's right. You let someone like Randall push you down, he'll keep pushing till there's nothing left." Jake flinched, his hands dropping, his eyes red as Darius's gaze landed on him. "You've got a chance to fix this, son, but it's your last one." Tara wiped her eyes, her voice soft. "He means it. Look at him." Miles nodded, his grin faint. "Jake's not laughing now." Ellie clutched her books, her whisper fierce. "This is epic." Mr. Phelps adjusted his glasses, his tone firm. "We'll enforce this, Chief. No more free passes." Darius nodded, then turned to Amara, his voice softening. "Proud of you, kid." She smiled, small but bright, and the hook sank in. The chief's words were a tide turning, and Westfield High would never be the same. The hallway at Westfield High settled into a charged silence as Chief Darius Tate's speech echoed off the lockers. The fluorescent lights steady now, their hum a quiet pulse beneath the weight of his promise. Amara stood beside him, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, her denim jacket a badge of resilience, her braids framing a face that held no malice, only a quiet strength that had shifted the room. Jake Randall sat slumped against the locker, his Nikes scuffed beyond repair, his blonde hair a tangled mess, his hands trembling as the reality of his choices crashed over him like a wave he couldn't outrun. The crowd watched, their phones stowed, their eyes sharp with a mix of judgment and hope, as Darius crouched beside Jake, his voice low but firm. "You've got a record now, Randall. School's mine, maybe more if you don't shape up. But I'm not here to bury you. I'm here to pull you out if you'll let me." Jake's breath hitched, his voice a rasp. I messed up bad, sir. I didn't think—" Darius cut him off, his tone steady. "That's your problem. You didn't think? Start now." Tara stepped closer, her pink sweater a splash of color, her voice bold. "You owe her more than sorry, Jake. Fix it." Miles nodded, his lanky frame tense. "Yeah, prove you mean it." Ellie's glasses flashed as she added, "Everyone's watching." The crowd murmured agreement, a swell of voices. "Make it right!" "No more bullying." And Jake nodded faintly, his eyes meeting Amara's, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Tate. Really." She tilted her head, her tone dry but open. "Show me, not tell me." The hook landed hard. Jake's fall was a mirror, and the crowd's resolve was the light he'd have to follow. The hallway at Westfield High breathed with a new rhythm as Jake Randall's apology hung in the air, the fluorescent lights casting a gentle glow over the linoleum, the dented lockers standing as monuments to a battle won. Amara adjusted her backpack, her sketchbook secure, her denim jacket settling around her like a second skin, while Chief Darius Tate rose to his full height, his uniform a symbol of order restored. The air cleared, the faint scent of pine mingling with the crisp fall breeze slipping through an open window, and the crowd began to disperse, their footsteps a soft shuffle as they carried the story outward. Darius clapped a hand on Amara's shoulder, his voice warm. "You handled this like a Tate. Strong, steady." She grinned, her braids bouncing. "Learned from the best, Dad." He turned to the remaining students, his tone firm. "This doesn't end here. Westfield's getting a reset. No more blind eyes, no more bullies running the show. You see something, say something. Tara raised her fist, her voice bright. We've got your back, Chief. Miles nodded, his grin wide. New rules, new school. Ellie smiled, her glasses glinting. Finally. Mr. Phelps straightened, his voice resolute. I'll meet with the principal. Zero tolerance starts today. Jake stood slowly, his Nikes scuffing as he faced Amara, his tone shaky but sincere. I'll make it up, whatever it takes. She nodded once, her eyes steady. Start with respect. For everyone. The hall emptied, the weight lifting, and the hook settled. Amara's stand had sparked a shift, and the promise of change was taking root. The hallway at Westfield High faded into quiet as the last students trickled out, the fluorescent lights dimming slightly, their hum a whisper against the lockers now still and silent. Outside, the Charlotte skyline glowed through the windows, a patchwork of steel and dusk, while the air carried the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of traffic, a city moving on, just like the school. Amara walked beside Chief Darius Tate, her sketchbook in hand, her denim jacket patched but proud, her braids swaying with each step as they headed for his cruiser parked out front. Jake lingered behind, his Nikes dragging, his blonde hair a shadow of its former glory, but his shoulders squared with the flicker of something new, maybe regret, maybe resolve. The story of that afternoon wasn't just about a bully's fall. It was about a girl who stood tall, a father who backed her up, and a school that learned to rise. Bullies thrive in silence, but Amara broke that silence, and Westfield High would carry her mark. So, what do you think, folks? Ever seen someone turn the tables on a bully? Drop your stories below. We're dying to hear. If this tale of courage and justice hit you hard, smash that like button, share it with your crew, and subscribe to Raven Stories for more. Oh, and one more thing. Where are you watching from in the USA? Tell us your city in the comments and we'll catch you in the next one.